In the shadows of Victorian London, a figure emerged that would leave a lasting scar on history. Known only as Jack the Ripper, this unknown killer's brutal crimes have haunted the world for over a century. The Ripper's reign of terror, fueled by unspeakable violence and mystery, has kept investigators and historians guessing ever since. Who was Jack the Ripper? How did he vanish without a trace? Today, we journey back to the fog-filled streets of 1888 London to uncover the grisly details of one of the most infamous unsolved cases in the world. Before the killings began, London was a bustling city, rapidly growing due to the Industrial Revolution. However, in the district of Whitechapel, life was harsh. This area was notorious for its overcrowded slums, rampant crime, and desperate poverty. Prostitutes worked the dimly lit streets, trying to survive in a world that offered them little protection. This was the perfect hunting ground for Jack the Ripper. The streets were a labyrinth of dark alleys and narrow passages, ideal for someone who wanted to remain unseen. At night, thick fog often cloaked the area, shrouding everything in an eerie atmosphere. It was a place where the police had little control, and fear was always lurking just around the corner. Marianne Nichols, August 31, 1888. The first known victim of Jack the Ripper was discovered in the early hours of the morning. Her throat had been cut so deeply that it nearly severed her head, and her abdomen had been slashed open. The brutality of her murder sent shockwaves through the local community, but little did they know this was only the beginning. Annie Chapman, September 8, 1888. Just over a week later, another victim was found. Annie Chapman's body was discovered behind a house. Her death was even more gruesome. Her throat had been cut, and her internal organs were partially removed. The precision with which the killer operated led investigators to believe that the Ripper had some medical knowledge, possibly even being a surgeon. Elizabeth Stride, September 30, 1888. On what would become known as the double event night, Elizabeth Stride was found with a single deep cut to her throat. However, her body had not been mutilated like the others, leading some to believe that Jack the Ripper was interrupted before he could finish his dark ritual. Catherine Eddowes, September 30, 1888. Just an hour after Stride's body was found, Catherine Eddowes was discovered. Her murder was particularly savage. Not only had her throat been cut, but her face was mutilated, her abdomen had been ripped open. Some of her internal organs were missing, further fueling the belief that the killer had surgical skills. Mary Jane Kelly, November 9, 1888. Mary Jane Kelly's murder was the most horrifying of them all. Found in her small room, her body was mutilated beyond recognition. Her face had been hacked away, and her organs were strewn across the room. Kelly's death marked the end of the Ripper's killing spree, but it was also the most disturbing, almost as if the Ripper had escalated his madness to its peak. The fear gripping London. As the murders continued, fear spread like wildfire through the streets of London. The newspapers, desperate to sell copies, sensationalized the killings, creating a climate of hysteria. Women were afraid to walk the streets at night, and the public began to lose faith in the police's ability to catch the killer. The pressure on Scotland Yard was immense, and yet, despite all efforts, Jack the Ripper seemed to vanish into the fog after each crime, leaving no trace behind. The case even drew the attention of Queen Victoria, who pressured the police to step up their investigations, but it was no use. The Ripper was always one step ahead. The Ripper's taunting letters. In addition to the brutal killings, the case took a chilling turn when the police and newspapers began receiving letters from someone claiming to be the killer. The most famous of these was the Dear Boss letter, which gave the murderer the name Jack the Ripper, a name that would forever be linked to terror. The writer of the letter mocked the police, bragging about his crimes and promising more bloodshed. Another infamous letter was the From Hell letter. sent along with half of a human kidney believed to be from one of the victims. This letter was particularly horrifying as it showcased the killer's sadistic sense of pleasure in tormenting not just his victims, but the entire city. Over the years, countless theories have emerged about Jack the Ripper's true identity. Some of the most prominent suspects include Montague John Drew, a barrister who was found dead in the Thames shortly after the final murder. Some believe he may have been mentally unstable and responsible for the killings, but there is little solid evidence to support this theory. Aaron Kosminski, a Polish immigrant who lived in Whitechapel and was later committed to an asylum. In modern times, his DNA has been linked to the crimes, though the evidence is controversial. Walter Sickert, a famous artist who some theorists believe used his paintings to depict scenes from the murders. Author Patricia Cornwell notably argued that Sickert was the Ripper, but the theory remains heavily debated. Prince Albert Victor, a member of the British royal family. Some conspiracy theories suggest that Prince Albert Victor, driven mad by syphilis, may have been responsible for the killings. This theory has largely been debunked but continues to capture the imagination of some true crime enthusiasts. Dr. Thomas Neil Crane, a doctor who was convicted of multiple murders using poison. Some believe that Crane was the Ripper, and it's rumored that his final words before execution were, "I am Jack, though," but this is widely regarded as a myth. Though Jack the Ripper's killing spree only lasted a few months, the impact of his crimes has endured for over a century. He has inspired countless books, movies, and even modern-day investigations. The mystery of who he is continues to capture the imaginations of people around the world. Despite the advances in forensic science, we are no closer to identifying Jack the Ripper than the police were in 1888. As long as his identity remains unknown, Jack the Ripper will continue to be a figure of terrifying fascination, representing the ultimate unsolved mystery. Though the fog has long lifted from the streets of Whitechapel, the legend of Jack the Ripper remains. His victims, forever lost to history, are remembered not just for the horror of their deaths, but for the enduring mystery surrounding the man who took their lives. Will we ever know the true identity of Jack the Ripper, or will he forever remain a phantom in the shadows of history?